I thought I still had time. I thought I could still control my emotions. But that moment, that look, destroyed everything I had ever held onto. If it were you, would you be able to go back? I never expected my stepson to come home early, but what he saw destroyed everything. I never planned to talk about this. Not to anyone, not even myself, out loud. But silence, it can grow sharp. Like broken glass you keep stepping on every time you try to move forward. So maybe if I speak it, I'll bleed a little less. This isn't a story I'm proud of. It's not some reckless fling. It wasn't born out of lust. It didn't even feel like a choice. It felt inevitable. I'm not a bad person. At least, I didn't think I was. I'm 39, a widow. I buried the only man who ever called me his piece 2 years ago. Since then, I've carried his memory like a second skin, worn it with pride, guilt, exhaustion. His son, Jake, was 19 when Mark passed. Now he's 21, tall, thoughtful, the kind of young man people assume will be fine, even when he's breaking inside. He came back last week. Said he just wanted to visit. Said he missed the house. I told myself it would be good to see him. Familiar, grounding, but deep down, I think I needed him more than I realized. The moment it all changed didn't start with a kiss or a touch. It started with an accidental glance. A pause too long, a silence too heavy. It's strange, the way something forbidden doesn't feel dangerous at first. It just feels alive. And I hadn't felt alive in a long, long time. After Mark died, people kept telling me to stay strong. As if strength was a jacket I could zip up and wear to bed. The house felt bigger without him. Too quiet, too clean, like a museum filled with memories I wasn't allowed to touch. I kept his mug on the kitchen counter. His books stayed on the shelf. His scent, faint as it was, clung to the collar of his old sweatshirt I refused to wash. Most days, I moved like a shadow. Wake up, work, cook for one, pretend I wasn't talking to ghosts when I whispered goodnight. The only time I heard laughter in this house was from the TV. Then Jake called. He said he'd be in town, asked if he could stay for a few days. I told him yes, too quickly. Maybe I just missed having someone who remembered Mark, not the polished version we show at funerals. But the real man, his mess, his silence, his love. Jake arrived with that same boyish smile, a little worn at the edges. I told myself it was just a visit. But even then, something deep inside me stirred, like the quiet beginning of a storm I didn't want to name. Jake had always been quiet, not withdrawn, just observant, like he was always collecting pieces of people and moments, storing them somewhere behind those steady eyes. When Mark and I got married, Jake was 16. He was polite, a little distant, but never cold. He'd help carry groceries without being asked. He'd sit at the kitchen table while I cooked. Sometimes reading, sometimes just there. He never called me Mom, and I never asked him to. But over time, we built something gentle, unspoken, familiar. After Mark passed, he stayed with me for a few months before moving back to campus. He said he didn't want me to feel alone. I pretended it was for him. Now, at 21, he looked older, but not in the way people mean when they talk about facial hair or broader shoulders. There was something quieter about him now, a maturity born from loss, maybe, or distance. He brought his bags inside like it was still his home. He hugged me, longer than expected. I felt it in my chest. We had dinner that night. Talked about nothing, music, food, the weather. But there were moments when his eyes lingered, moments when mine did too. And I told myself it was nothing. That grief sometimes twists things. That comfort isn't the same as longing. But part of me already knew, the stillness between us wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. It happened the third night after Jake returned. I had just stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a thin robe that clung to my damp skin. The house was quiet, the lights low. I thought he'd gone out for a walk. He liked those late evening strolls, especially in the neighborhood he grew up in. I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. That's when I heard the door creak. I turned. Jake stood there. Frozen. His eyes widened for a split second before he turned away. Fast, mumbling, "Sorry, I didn't know you were." His voice trailed off. I don't remember what I said. Maybe I laughed. Maybe I told him it was fine. I probably made it worse by pretending it didn't matter. But it did. Because in those 3 seconds, everything shifted. It wasn't about the robe or the water or the silence. It was the way he looked at me, like he was seeing me. Not as someone broken or responsible. Not as his father's widow. Just me. And for a moment, I stood there and didn't rush to cover up. I let the silence stretch between us. It wasn't sexual, not yet. It was something stranger, deeper, a recognition. That night, I laid awake, listening to the creaks in the house, the rain tapping on the window. I couldn't stop thinking about his face, the flush on his cheeks, the hesitation in his voice, the weight of his gaze. He had looked away. But I hadn't. And I didn't know what that meant yet. But something had started. Something quiet. Something dangerous. The next morning, I found a folded piece of paper on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation, just my name, Elena, written in Jake's handwriting. I stood there, heart ticking louder than the clock on the wall. For a moment, I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what he'd written. Because part of me already knew it wouldn't be simple. But I opened it anyway. It wasn't long, a single paragraph, written in pencil, a little smudged like he'd erased something first. You probably think I don't notice much. But I do. I see you moving through this house like you're trying not to wake the ghosts. I see how quiet your sadness is. And I just want you to know, if you ever feel invisible. You're not. I see you. I read it 3 times. I leaned on the counter, gripping the edge like it could anchor me to the floor. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't romantic, but it cracked something open inside me that had been sealed shut for years. Not because he desired me, there was nothing inappropriate in those words, but because he had seen me. Really seen me. And I hadn't realized how badly I needed that. That night, I folded the note again and placed it in the drawer where I kept old recipes and things I never used but couldn't throw away. Later, at dinner, I looked at Jake. He didn't bring it up. Neither did I. But his eyes searched mine, just for a second. And in that small, unspoken moment, something passed between us again. Not touch. Not words. But a pulse. And I knew it wasn't going away. It rained that night. Not the soft kind, the kind that rattles windows and swallows power lines. By 9 p.m., the house had gone dark, no lights. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just candles, shadows, and silence. I lit one in the kitchen, another in the hallway, and one more in the living room. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, a glass of wine in my hand, trying not to think too much. But of course, I did. I thought about Mark, about the way he used to trace circles on my back when I couldn't sleep. I thought about how long it had been since anyone touched me with tenderness. With intention, not out of habit, but because they wanted to. I didn't hear Jake come down the stairs, but suddenly, he was there, in the candlelight, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. I figured you'd still be up, he said softly. He sat beside me, close but not touching. We drank in silence, listening to the storm. I don't remember who reached first. Maybe I shifted, maybe he did, maybe we both leaned in, just enough for our shoulders to meet. But once they did, we didn't pull away. I turned to him. His face, half in shadow, half in gold, was calm, still, but his eyes, they were searching mine like they were looking for permission. And I gave it. Not in words, not in a gesture, but in how I didn't flinch when his hand found mine. We didn't speak. He leaned in slowly, carefully, as if asking a question with every breath. And I met him halfway. The kiss was quiet, warm, nothing urgent, just two people breathing the same aching silence. When we pulled apart, neither of us moved. We sat in the candlelight, hands still touching, breaths tangled. The line had been crossed. And yet, it didn't feel like ruin. It felt like something breaking open. Something buried. Something I hadn't allowed myself to want in a very long time. The next morning, the power was back, but the house still felt dim. I woke up early, too early. My body was still, but my mind had been running all night. I heard the creak of Jake's door down the hall, the faint sound of water running. We moved through the space like two ghosts avoiding each other's shadows. He didn't come to the kitchen like usual. No coffee, no casual, sleepy, good morning, just absence, thick and loud. I stood by the sink, rinsing a mug that didn't need to be cleaned, listening for footsteps that didn't come. When he finally appeared, it was brief. He grabbed a jacket from the hook, avoided my eyes, and said, "Going for a walk, be back later." That was it. Not cold, not angry, just distant. Detached. I nodded, pretending not to care, pretending I hadn't stayed up all night replaying every moment of what we'd shared, every breath, every stillness, every shiver of contact. But I wasn't numb, I was raw. And underneath the guilt was something worse, wanting. Not just the kiss. I wanted to feel seen again. I wanted the safety of that candlelit moment. Even if I didn't deserve it. Even if I couldn't ask for it. We had crossed a line. Now we had to live on the other side. We didn't talk about it. Not the kiss, not the silence after, not the way we both started avoiding rooms the other was in. It was easier, somehow, to pretend we were fine. Two polite people sharing a house. Two people bound by memory, not by what happened in the dark. At breakfast, we spoke in fragments. Want coffee? Sure. Did it rain all night? Think so. But our eyes never held each other for long. At dinner, the table felt wider. We passed dishes like strangers, carefully, quietly, like any touch might break the illusion that nothing had changed. But everything had. I saw it in the way he lingered just a little too long by the doorway before leaving the room. In the way his eyes flicked to my hands when I poured wine. As if remembering how they'd once reached for his. In the way my chest tightened whenever he stood too close. We were pretending. But the pretense couldn't mute the current between us. It didn't go away. It hummed under the floorboards. In the quiet between words. In the places we used to fill with small talk and shared memories of Mark. Now, there was only silence. But it wasn't peace, it was pressure, and I didn't know how much longer we could hold it. One night, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, same tired eyes. Same practiced smile. But something else was there, too. A flicker. Not of shame, not yet. Something darker. Needier. Like I was beginning to understand just how deep this hunger ran. And how far I might be willing to go just to feel real again. I didn't tell anyone. Not a friend, not a therapist, not even myself, not really. But that night, I sat at the kitchen table long after Jake had gone to bed. And I opened the drawer. The one with recipes I never used and scribbled notes from a life I used to have. The letter he wrote me was still there, folded carefully, almost reverently. I read it again. If you ever feel invisible, you're not. It hurt, not because it was untrue, but because it had been the first honest thing I'd heard in a long time. I don't know what I was expecting. Redemption? Forgiveness? A reset button? None of that came. Instead, I whispered the words I had kept locked inside. I miss being wanted. Not needed, not depended on, not respected, wanted. It wasn't just about Jake. It was about time. About being a woman who had spent so long carrying everyone else's grief that she forgot what it felt like to be seen as whole. Beautiful. Alive. I wasn't in love with him. I don't think he was in love with me. But in that moment, we gave each other something we were both starving for. A mirror. A flicker of warmth in a frozen house. And I know what you might be thinking. That I crossed a line. That I should have stopped myself. That grief is no excuse. You're probably right. But I also know this. For the first time in years, someone looked at me like I was more than a memory. More than a widow. More than a woman just holding herself together. Jake saw me. And whether that's right or wrong, it changed me. I'm not telling you this for approval or pity. I'm telling you because secrets rot in the dark. And I'm tired of rotting. Jake left 2 days later. No goodbye speech, no confrontation, just a quiet knock on my door and a soft, "Heading out now." I nodded, barely managing a smile. He didn't hug me, and I didn't ask him to. We both knew something had ended. Or maybe something had begun. I still don't know which. After he left, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. Not just silent, but hollow. Like a place where something had been cracked open and never quite sealed again. I washed the mugs. I folded the blanket on the couch. I lit a candle, just one, and let it burn until it drowned in its own wax. And then I sat down. I haven't spoken to Jake since. Not out of shame, not even out of fear. Maybe out of mercy. Some things lose their meaning once you try to explain them. And this wasn't made for words. It was made for a moment. A fracture in time, a mistake, a comfort, a truth. Whatever it was real. So now I sit here, with his note still tucked in that same drawer, and I ask myself something I can't answer. If you were me? If you were that lonely? If someone finally looked at you like you were still alive? Would you have turned away? Or would you have closed your eyes and let yourself feel it?